This is TBK's Truth Frame, revealing the echoes of history across our world. Vietnam, the long shadow of a revolution, the spark that ignited a generation. The Vietnam War did not begin with the first American Marines landing at Da Nang, nor with the fall of French forces at Dien Bien Phu. Its true ignition point lies earlier, back in 1945, when the collapse of Japanese occupation left a power vacuum and a nation divided between colonial return and revolutionary ambition. The French sought to reclaim their empire. Vietnamese nationalists, led by a quiet, determined revolutionary named Ho Chi Minh, believed the age of empires was over. Two visions collided. One demanded obedience to the past. The other demanded freedom for the future. That collision lit a fuse that would burn for 30 years. The long shadow of a revolution. The war did not end in 1975. It began decades earlier, in the quiet resolve of a man who believed history could be bent by will alone. Long before the tanks rolled toward Saigon. Long before the world watched helicopters lift from rooftops. A thin, determined revolutionary named Ho Chi Minh whispered a promise into the bones of a divided nation. Vietnam will be free. From jungles soaked in monsoon rain to villages scorched by artillery fire, that promise became a movement. A movement became an army. And an army became a tidal wave that would not stop until the last flag fell. By the time the world reached 1975, the final battles were not sudden explosions of violence, they were the end of a long, relentless push that had been building for 30 years. This is the story of that push. This is the story of the battles before the end. The root of the final offensive, Ho Chi Minh's long game. Ho Chi Minh did not live to see the end of the war. He died in 1969, but the strategy that crushed South Vietnam was his creation. He believed victory would come not from one decisive battle, but from attrition, political erosion, psychological exhaustion, the slow bleeding of an enemy's will.
His gen rằng, võ nguyên giáp and la tơ văn tiến dũng, carried out this vision with precision.
They built a war machine that could survive anything. Bombing campaigns, chemical defoliation, massive American troop deployments, the collapse of supply lines, the loss of entire divisions. Because the North Vietnamese strategy was simple. Endure. Outlast. Advance. By the early 1970s, the United States was withdrawing. South Vietnam was weakening. And the long push was entering its final phase. The battles that broke the South before 1975. The Easter Offensive, 1972. This was the first major attempt to break South Vietnam without American ground troops. 3 massive thrusts hit. Quang Tri in the north. The Central Highlands. The Mekong Delta. It was a conventional invasion, tanks, artillery, infantry, not guerrilla warfare. South Vietnam barely survived, and only with overwhelming U.S. air power. But the North learned something crucial. The Army of the Republic of Vietnam, ARVN, could be broken. It was only a matter of time. The Battle of Quang Tri, 1972. The ancient citadel became a symbol of endurance. 81 days of bombardment. 328,000 artillery shells. Entire neighborhoods erased. The North lost tens of thousands of soldiers, but they held long enough to prove they could seize and keep territory. This battle was the psychological turning point. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, the artery of victory. Not a single battle, but the lifeline of the entire war. By 1974, the trail had become a multi-lane logistical highway, protected by anti-aircraft guns, reinforced with fuel pipelines, capable of moving entire divisions. It was the circulatory system of the final offensive. The Battle of Phuc Long, December 1974 to January 1975. This was the test. North Vietnam attacked Phuc Long to see if the United States would intervene. Washington did nothing. No bombers. No carriers. No airstrikes. The message to Hanoi was unmistakable. You may proceed. This was the green light for the final push. The final drive begins, the Ho Chi Minh Campaign. Though Ho Chi Minh had passed away, the final offensive was named in his honor. It was not one battle, it was a rolling collapse. Beneath what falls first. The Central Highlands disintegrate.
Huế and Đà Nẵng phun nát.
Hundreds of thousands flee in panic. The ARVN retreats become stampedes. Entire divisions vanish. By April 1975, only one fortress remains between the north and Saigon.
Xuân Lộc.
The last gate. The last stand. The final heartbeat of a dying republic. The last gate, the final battles of the Vietnam War. The year the ground gave way, 1975. By early 1975, the war had already shifted beneath everyone's feet. The Paris Peace Accords promised peace with honor, but the guns never truly fell silent. North Vietnamese units remained inside the South, rebuilding, resupplying, and waiting for the moment when the world's attention drifted elsewhere. That moment came faster than anyone expected. South Vietnam was exhausted. Inflation soared. Corruption hollowed institutions. Desertions reached 24,000 soldiers every month. The United States, once Saigon's lifeline, was unwilling to return. Congress rejected President Gerald Ford's appeals for more aid. Hanoi understood, the final chapter could begin. The Spring Offensive, a nation collapsing in real time. In March 1975, the North launched a massive offensive across the Central Highlands and northern provinces. What they expected to take a year unfolded in weeks. Entire ARVN units disintegrated. Officers abandoned their men. Cities like Hue and Da Nang fell without meaningful resistance. But not everywhere. Xuân Lộc, the last fortress, April 9 to 21, 1975. Xuân Lộc was the final defensive gate east of Saigon, a crossroads whose fall would open the highway straight to the capital. President Nguyen Van Thieu ordered it held, at all costs. The 18th ARVN Division, led by Brigadier General Le Minh Dao, became the backbone of this last stand. Outnumbered nearly 2-1, they fought with a ferocity that stunned even their enemies. For 12 days, Xuân Lộc became a furnace. Streets turned into trenches. Buildings collapsed under artillery fire. Soldiers fought hand-to-hand for intersections. Civilians fled through smoke and rubble. The 18th Division repelled wave after wave, forcing the North to redirect entire corps to break the defense. But courage could not compensate for exhaustion, dwindling ammunition, and the collapse of the wider front. When surrounding provinces fell, Swan Lock became isolated. The defenders were ordered to withdraw. The last gate had opened. The fall of Saigon, April 30, 1975. As North Vietnamese tanks rolled toward Saigon, the city dissolved into chaos. Helicopters lifted desperate families from rooftops. Lines stretched outside embassies. Documents burned in courtyards. Parents pushed children toward departing aircraft, praying they might live. On April 30, 1975, North Vietnamese troops entered the capital. The war was over. A tank crashed through the gates of the presidential palace, an image that would define the end of an era. Aftermath: a nation reborn, a people scattered. The end of the war did not bring immediate peace. Vietnam was unified, but the process was harsh. Hundreds of thousands of former ARVN soldiers, civil servants, and intellectuals were sent to re-education camps. Many spent years in forced labor. The Boat People. Between 1975 and the mid-1990s, more than 1.5 million Vietnamese fled by sea. Some escaped. Many vanished into the waves. Inside Vietnam, the war became a story of liberation. Outside Vietnam, it became a story of loss, exile, and survival. Both were true. Both were incomplete. The long echo, what the final battles mean today. The final battles of the Vietnam War were not just military events. They were emotional earthquakes that reshaped families, identities, and entire diasporas. Swan Lock stands as a symbol of resistance against impossible odds. Saigon's fall remains a wound and a rebirth. The aftermath scattered Vietnamese voices across the world, voices now rebuilding memory through storytelling, archives, and truth-seeking. The final toll. By the end of the Vietnam War, the cost was staggering. North Vietnam and the Viet Cong suffered an estimated 1.1 million military deaths, with hundreds of thousands more wounded. South Vietnam lost approximately 250,000 soldiers, and more than 300,000 civilians were killed. The United States recorded 58,220 dead, over 150,000 wounded, and billions of dollars in aircraft, vehicles, and material lost or abandoned. South Vietnam's armed forces collapsed almost entirely. Thousands of vehicles, aircraft, artillery pieces, and bases fell into northern hands. North Vietnam, though victorious, emerged battered, cities shattered, farmlands cratered, and an entire generation scarred by sacrifice. The war ended with a flag raised over Saigon, but its shadow stretches across continents, across generations, and across every story still waiting to be told. Conclusion: the lesson the world cannot afford to forget. The Vietnam War did not end on April 30, 1975. It ended in the memories of millions, in the silence of families waiting for fathers who never returned, in the empty chairs of classrooms where children once sat, in the quiet grief of a nation rebuilding itself from ashes. Vietnam showed the world that even the most powerful nations can be humbled, that ideologies can tear apart the very people they claim to liberate, and that the price of conflict is always paid by those who never chose it, the farmers, the mothers, the children, the displaced, the forgotten. Vietnam stands as a warning carved into the world's conscience. Once a war begins, no one controls how far it spreads, how long it burns, or how deeply it scars. In an age where nations still rattle sabers and leaders still gamble with lives, the memory of Vietnam must speak louder than ever. It must remind us that peace is not weakness, it is wisdom. Dialogue is not surrender, it is survival. And unity is not naive, it is the only path that keeps humanity from repeating its darkest chapters. The world does not need another Vietnam. The world does not need another generation carrying the weight of a war they did not start. The world needs the courage to choose peace before conflict becomes inevitable. Because in the end, the greatest victory is not the fall of a city or the raising of a flag. The greatest victory is a future where no child grows up learning the sound of war. Our truth frame sits inside this lineage. It is part of the global effort to restore what was erased, to honor those who fought, fled, or fell, and to remind the world that history is not just dates and battles, it is human lives, human choices, and human courage. Thank you for stepping into this frame of truth. If this story moved you, share it forward and help restore the voices time tried to erase. Until the next episode, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep the memory alive.